Greetings and welcome. We are in Senior AP English, and our objective for the hour now is to work with the poetry of the great William Blake. I want to point out a couple of things on 752 real quickly. Do you see this in your book? If you've already read the biography on Blake, you'll notice that there's a couple of things interesting. For example, notice on the right-hand column on 752 that Mrs. Blake made an observation about her husband once, that she spends very little time with him because she said once he's always in paradise. Now, what that means is going to be better understood if you look at the notable quote on the left-hand side of the page. Do you see it? The imagination is not a state, that is to say a state of mind. The imagination is the human existence itself. That's what we mean by mysticism. And Blake is the quintessential mystic poet. In other words, he's always living in the mind and in the imagination. That's where he spends all of his time. The second thing I need you to write down real quickly are the two dates. 789, 1 year before 1800, and 1794. Okay? 1789, 1794. 1789, he will publish first his Songs of Innocence. 1794, he will publish his Songs of Experience. And once he has done that, he has kind of set the trajectory for his poetical career. Now again, we already pointed out, we consider Blake one of those first-generation romantic poets, along with Wordsworth and Coleridge. Now, we already introduced Songs of Innocence, Songs of Experience last time, when we spoke about the dynamic or dialectic tension between, on the one hand, innocence and on the other hand, experience. What we'll do now is take a look at two representative offerings. We'll start on 754 with the Lamb. We will then go to the text on 758, the Tyger, and then we'll finish on page 760 with Sick Rose. Those are the three poems of Blake that I want to spend the majority of my time with, trying to get a sense of the difference between Songs of Innocence, Songs of Experience. Let's start with Songs of Innocence and the Lamb. I'm with you on 754. The Lamb. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Gave thee life and bid thee feed by the stream and o'er the mead. Gave thee clothing of delight, softest clothing woolly bright. Gave thee such a tender voice, making all the vales rejoice. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Little lamb, I'll tell thee, little lamb, I'll tell thee. He is called by thy name, for he calls himself a lamb. He is meek, he is mild, he became a little child. I a child, and thou a lamb. We are called by his name. Little lamb, God bless thee. Little lamb, God bless thee. Now, right away, let's just make some quick observations about this poem at 2B in terms of form. Notice that this poem might as well be written for children. We're going to argue that it's actually a pretty sophisticated poem. But let's start out by just asking, what is so simple about this poem? Of all the poems we've read in our entire year together, some of you will say, of all the poems I've read my entire high school career, this is probably the simplest poem I've ever read. But what makes it simple? What makes it simple? Jot down one or two things that makes this poem so unbelievably easy, simple, accessible. What do you think, Miss Klingler, makes this poem for you so simple? It's an easy poem. It's a simple poem. But why? What makes it such? The words are real simple. Notice how simpleton the words are. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Almost comes across like a children's nursery rhyme. Notice the rhythms of the poem. Very simple. Okay. The poem is divided into two parts, correct? Part one, the first stanza, asks the lamb a question. Right? The speaker of the poem is actually speaking to a lamb and asks what? Do you know who made you? And gave you the attributes of a lamb. Jot down, what are those attributes of the lamb most emphasized? Now, I got to be fair. Teaching out in Wyoming here, I've had one or two students who actually were raised around sheep. And they will say about sheep, Blake got it all wrong. These are, without a doubt, the stupidest creatures ever imagined. And they're disgusting, smelly creatures. They are unbelievably, stupid, for lack of a better phrase. I mean, they really are. They are as stupid an animal as one could ever imagine. And they are completely helpless. I mean, these animals are worse than high school freshmen. That's how bad they are, okay? They are worse. They are unbelievably helpless. If you don't tell them what to do, these poor animals, they have no clue. They are disgustingly smelly creatures. There isn't anything beautiful or childlike about these disgusting animals. Other students will say, yeah, we're clearly working with symbolism here, aren't we? The lamb in the first stanza is represented as what? Obviously, Songs of Innocence is going to be a giveaway here. But what will be some of the adjectives you want to write down? What are some of the attributes of a lamb? They got that sweet little voice. Aww. Some of you will say, I remember the first time, in the spring when I watched the newborn lambs all out there running around in the meadow or in the little pen or whatever. And I thought that was so cute. Maybe they took you on a little field trip when you were in 3rd grade or whatever, and you got to feed the baby lambs. Of course, the understanding is that these animals are completely helpless without the help, right? The protection. The question is, do you know who made you? And the answer is provided in the 2nd stanza. But the answer is interesting, Mr. Kelleher. The answer that's provided as to who made the lamb. Notice the answer. I'll tell you who made you. Here, the poet steps in. He is called by thy name. For he calls himself a lamb. He is meek and he is mild. He became a little child. I gotta have help here. Keller, help me out. What is referencing here? Jesus made the lamb.
No, God made the lamb.
See? Now we start to, like I said, this poem starts out simple, and then all of a sudden, because Kelleher goes, yeah, it is Jesus made the lamb. He is the one, according to Christian theology, called the Lamb of the world that taketh away the sins of the world and blah, blah, blah. Jesus made the lamb? That's what Blake's arguing? Who made the lamb then? God made the lamb? But when has God ever called a lamb? And why would God ever want to be equated with the lamb? Go back to Greek mythology. Would Zeus ever, can you imagine Zeus wanting to be portrayed as a lamb? Zeus is always portrayed, by the way, as what? If you want to talk Zeus, it's always what? Some bird of flight or some bird of prey, right? Okay, Zeus you don't want to mess with. Okay? Obviously here, Blake is playing a Christian theological game of mixing his notions of deity of Christ with God, right? That is to say, Christ is God, but God performs this notion in Christian theology. This, by the way, is Milton's Paradise Regained, not Paradise Lost, right? Through the coming into the world of Jesus Christ as God incarnate, etc., etc., etc. And this is all part of Christian theology. Notice, I a child and thou a lamb. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What is this I a child thing about? I a child and thou a lamb. This is the poet speaking, talking to the lamb. I a child and thou a lamb. The poet takes what kind of voice? There it is, I a child. The poet is taking the voice of a child. I am a child, thou a lamb. We are called by his name. Little lamb, God bless thee. Little lamb, God bless thee. The poem belongs in Songs of Innocence. Why? Write it down. Why? Blake will put some of you will say, dude, this is just so obvious. This gets dark at night obvious. And yet some of you will say, this is really more intriguing poem than at first when I looked at it. Why is this poem in Songs of Innocence?
It feels like a child.
What characteristics of innocence are emphasized in this poem? What characteristics of innocence? What would you say? Lack of knowledge. Notice the poem begins by, do you even know who made you? To which the answer obviously is no. No. A child has to be told everything, including even its origin. Right? What else? Helplessness.
Meek.
Meek means what to you? What does meek
Like
mean?
quiet.
Quiet. Keep going.
Purity.
Purity. Innocence. Purity. Meekness.
Simplicity.
Simplicity. That's a good one. And notice then that this poem carries with it that sense of the very simplistic syntax of the poem. Very easy to read. Very easy to understand. A little bit more complicated theology, especially when you go to page 758 and you look at the kind of counterpart poem in Songs of Experience. Blake wrote Little Lamb. Then he turned around and wrote what really became maybe his most famous poem, The Tyger. Notice the spelling of the Tyger, by the way. He uses the old arcane version of this one. All right. A few years ago, I was at a zoo in Omaha with my family. And this zoo boasted one of the largest cat holdings in all of the world. It's a large zoo. And we were there in the late afternoon. And we were on the one side of the park. And all of a sudden I heard this sound. Really loud sound. And I immediately kind of turned. And one of the people worked at the zoo said, "Oh, it's feeding time in the cat area." So we start running to get over there because the person said, "You do not want to miss this when they feed those cats. You do not want to miss what's about to happen." As we ran to get over there, the sound gets louder and louder. And by the time we get there to this huge pen for these tigers, the roaring is so loud that when you're standing there, you can feel the vibration through the cement up into your body. That's how loud it is because it's reverberating off of the cement. And one of the zoo workers is there wanting to watch this. And I'm standing there next to the zoo worker and he goes, "Can you imagine hearing that but in the jungle? Not in a cage, but in the jungle, where you know there's no bars, there's no protection for these animals, these huge cats." They threw that meat out and it was gone in no time. I mean, they completely shredded that meat. And for a split second you realized, some of you have cats, little baby kittens or cats, and if they don't want picked up and they want put down, they have a way to let you know. Imagine what a full-grown tiger is like. Let's just say it out loud. The tiger is the greatest killing machine ever invented. Right? It is. On land. On water, of course, we think of the great whites as being its counterpart, don't we? But the tiger is the great killing machine of all time. Blake wants to celebrate the greatest killing machine of all time, the tiger. Let's look at this one now. I'm on 758. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer? What the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil? What dread grasp dare its deadly terrors clasp? When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tiger, tiger burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry? Now, I'm going to say this because I can, and you're AP students, and so I can get away with it. But let's put it in your notes. This poem is William Blake's Theodicy. We've messed around with Theodicy from the very beginning. Notice we started, in fact, with the Iliad and the Odyssey and asking the theodicic question. It, of course, culminated for us in the classic text of Paradise Lost, but now we're back to it again. The question, though, theodicically is asked intriguingly as what? Put it in your notes. What is the question that Blake asks? What is the question if it's a theodicic question? What is it? How would you say it, Schreiber?
How can
someone who makes something as innocent as a lamb make the killing machine?
How do you account? Notice that in that question the mother asks about her child dying of leukemia. Can I point this out without insult? The mother never says, "Why has my child got good health?" I want to know. You need to answer my question. Why does the child have perfect health? Why does my child not have leukemia? Now that is interesting. Why is that question never asked? Theologians have been pointing, St. Augustine is famous for pointing this out. The mother never asks, why does my child not have leukemia? Why is my child totally healthy? Never asks that question. The question she does ask is, how can a God who created my child also allow for leukemia? That's the question. Augustine, by the way, will point out, if you're going to ask one question, you got to be willing to ask the second question. Blake plays an intriguing game, as Schreiber points out. He's going to ask a really interesting series of questions. Ultimately, we're going to get to his Theodicy question. Notice how this poem is a series of questions. Did you notice this? It begins in the first stanza by pointing out that the Tyger is burning like he's on fire. For those of you who have ever had the opportunity to be up close to a tiger, like a Bengal, when they're in the prime of their life, they have tremendous coloration, don't they? Right? That orange and that black is just stunning anyway, right? And it has the glow of fire for Blake. Notice he will ask a series of questions. Let's put them in our own words. Some of you will find this to be a very radical poem. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? What's the question he asks? We'll go through each of these in order. Each one of these questions is really asked as an attack. What's the first question?
Like, kind of who made you?
What kind of insane person would create a killing machine like a tiger? It's fearful symmetry. Really? A tiger? Like a lamb, I get it. They're cute, they run around, they go bah. But a tiger? A tiger? Look at the next one. In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? People have said two things most frightening in the world: the eye of a tiger and the eye of a great white shark, because both of them show death. They have no interest in life, they're interested in death. And for anybody that's ever seen one of those, I once actually had a student who sat in this room, went off to Special Forces, and believe it or not, his job was he was a deep sea diver. He got so good at it that he was the instructor. And he was working off the Gulf Coast in deep water with a young would-be diver when all of a sudden, out of the corner of his eye, they were just about 15 or 20 feet below the surface of the water, he saw the shadow move out of the corner of his eye, and he immediately had the young diver go up the ladder, and he waited. And sure enough, he got to see a 28-foot long great white who turned and came right at him and right past him. And he was able to literally look right into the eye of a great white. Later, when he comes back, he's talking about it. He said, I remember once you made an observation about great whites. You weren't lying. Those eyes were literally death. By the way, I should point out, never got back in the water again. Highly trained guy, never got it. They did all kinds of classes to help him lose his fear, but once he was that close, not in a cage, he realized you're pretty much helpless when you're in that one. It doesn't matter what kind of little gun you got under the water. One of those machines is coming at you. You're not getting away. Sharks in the water, tigers on land, same gig. There's all kinds of stories about, numbers and numbers of people going out to try and hunt a tiger, and they just can't do it. They're so smart as well. Notice here, it's the eyes. On what wings dare he aspire? He who? See, this is interesting. He who? What's the pronoun here that's being used? Who aspired? He who? The assumption is what?
God.
Yeah, this poem is an attack on God. It's almost as if he can say, dude, I totally get it about lambs. They're so cute and soft and they symbolize innocence. Oh, lambs are so sweet. I totally get creating one of those. But a tiger? Creating a tiger? How dare you aspire to that? What the hand dare seize the fire? Creating a tiger was like trying to grab fire in your hand. He keeps going. What shoulder? The size of tigers. What art could twist the sinews of thy heart? Was there no compassion? Was there no concern that you would create this killing machine? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? I spent some of my life in Asia, and as a young kid, the Singapore Straits Times told a story that I remember them reading to us over breakfast one morning. It was probably a propedeutic to keep us out of the jungle when we visit Malaysia. But there was a story that had come out of Malaysia of a tiger that had swept a 200-pound man, had just done like this, and had completely cut his body in half with just one sweep. And everybody got to watch this because the tiger had come into the village, and he just went and just cut the man entirely in half with just one paw, with just one sweep. And they said he did it so fast that, well, and then he just walked, and then he just ran off. The power of a hand of a tiger. The question is, really? I totally get those cute little feet backslash hooves of a lamb. I totally get it. Oh, they're so sweet out there running around when they're newborns. But a tiger? Really? A tiger? Keep going. What the hammer? What the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread grasp dare its deadly terrors class? Notice, Miss Kennedy, 2 times in this poem already the word dare has been used. We say it this way, don't we? How dare you? Question mark. Right? What does it mean when someone says that to you? How dare you? Question mark means what? You should have done it or you shouldn't have done it. This poem is an outright attack on the creator who would make a tiger. A lamb, Blake says, I totally get it. But a tiger? When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who make the lamb make thee? All right, now we're to Schreiber's observation a few seconds ago. That Blake's Theodicy is an attempt to reconcile 2 seeming opposites. But let's not begin with their opposites. Let's begin with a simple question of their unity. In what way is a lamb and a tiger the same? I mean, dude, you can imagine in your mind's eye that if you put a lamb and a tiger together in a box, right? Right?
Lamb chop.
Right, that's right. Now, it's not like you can imagine that lamb's going to have much work to do, right? He'll probably stand there looking really cute, and the tiger will say what? What sometimes senior boys say to freshman girls, welcome to Worland High School. Oh, wait, we'll get to the symbolic nature of this poem in a little bit. Let's just stick with the theology for a second, though, as Schreiber was taking us to the Theodicy. Both of them are products of nature. Agreed? Both of them are animals in the animal kingdom. What's the difference between a lamb and a tiger, though? Jot it down. What is the fundamental difference between a lamb and a tiger?
One's a good experience.
How would you say it? See, a lot of times we ask the most stupidly simple questions in here, and then when you start trying to actually write down an answer, you go, that is a very intriguing question. What is the difference between a lamb and a tiger? Fundamentally, what is the difference? Yes, Aristotle will place them in different kinds of classification systems by virtue of them being one predator, the other prey. But I'm asking a more fundamental question, philosophically. What is the fundamental difference between a lamb and a tiger? Some of you will say humans don't fear lambs. They obviously fear tigers, and that is true. Keep going, though. What is foundationally different about these 2 animals, and what does Blake emphasize as foundationally different about these 2 animals? How would you say it, Mr. Batson? What is the biggest difference between the lamb and the tiger for Blake? They both have qualities.
Can't really control a tiger.
Notice over and over again, a tiger is pictured as something that is uncontrollable, trying to grab hold of fire in your hand. Can't do it, can you? Right? And therefore, which one is to be feared? Right? You don't fear lambs, correct? You definitely fear tigers. You don't fear lambs, right? Okay, why does... Now again, this is going to sound like a really simple question, but I want you to try and write down an answer so I can prove to you this ain't so simple a question. We get it. Lambs are going to be in Songs of Innocence section. Jot down, why would Blake put this poem in Songs of Experience? Jot it down. Try and come up with a real answer. Why does this poem belong in Songs of Experience? Give us an answer, Miss Katie. How come? Why would he put a poem about the violence of a tiger in Songs of Experience?
I think because, I don't know, like when you gain experience, you become maybe a little bit less in control than you think.
Whoa, whoa. See, this is really interesting all of a sudden. Thank you, Miss Katie, for that fine observation. Think about these two poems now as suggesting something about the world. Are you ready for this? See, I'm asking some a series of questions, and then you can just jot down ideas. Is it true at Worland High? You've been here for a day or two, haven't you? So you can make an anthropological study of it. Is it true at Worland High that there are two kinds of students? There are the lambs, and there are the tigers. Is that true? Have we just reduced human population to two types? In the world, there are lambs. In the world, there are tigers. And question, which one would you want to be? Because in the animal kingdom, we know who wins that debate every time. Agreed? Do you think it's fair to say at Worland High School there are lambs and there are tigers? Is that a fair way to talk about it? And our instincts always take us, of course, here, as I said to you before in an earlier lecture, anytime you start talking about experience versus innocence, immediately, obviously, as Freud would point out, we always start thinking about sexuality. But it can go beyond, way beyond that. I mean, sexuality for Freud is obviously foundational. But in what ways is it easy to divide people up into lambs and tigers?
Experience.
Are you saying that the more experience you get, the more violent you get? The meaner you get? Why can't it go the opposite direction? Why can't the more you learn, the kinder you get? And are we saying that these say no to bully programs they're always talking about in schools are a complete and total waste of time? How about the argument that we don't want to eradicate bullying because you need tigers in the world? Because tigers are the way a culture survives. Without tigers, you've got no defense. By the way, now we're back to Plato's Republic, for those of you that can recall. Plato argued, remember, that for young children in their formal education, you have to take them out and make them watch battles on the battlefield. Why? Because you don't want them to be afraid of warfare. Why? Because they're going to grow up to be your soldiers, and you can't have them afraid. You want a soldier who's a lamb, or do you want a soldier who's a tiger? And question, when a soldier throws a child a piece of fruit from out of his tank, is he a lamb or is he a tiger? Are the best tigers the ones that appear to be lambs? That's what Glaucon said, remember? Glaucon said to Socrates, the best kind of people are the ones who appear to be just, appear to be virtuous, so they can get anything and everything they want. They get to be tigers. Wait a minute. Have you been living your whole life so that you could learn how to be a tiger but appear to be a lamb? And what about those people that keep telling you that when someone's mean to you, you should just be nice back? Be a lamb back. Don't be a tiger. But wait a minute, that's totally counterintuitive. If the person is jacking on me, why should I be a lamb back? I should be a tiger back and jack them better than they jacked me. Right? And how will you as a parent, remember we talked about your young daughter leaving the house without her top on. Remember we had that conversation. Now I'm ready for the second one. This time it's your son who comes home from the playground and he's gotten the snot beat out of him by the bully boy. You're going to say to him what? You need to just stay away from that bad boy and not mess with him. And if he hits on you, you need to run away. Are you going to say that to your boy? Or are you going to say to your boy, don't walk through that door again unless you jack that kid tomorrow? You're not my son unless you take care of business. Somebody's going down tomorrow at recess and it ain't going to be you. Is that what you're going to say? You're going to teach your boy to be a tiger? Or are you going to teach your boy to be a lamb? And how many high school seniors graduate thinking they're tigers only to go off to college and find out, no, this is the way all freshmen do it. Come on, this is going to be great. And then they find out they thought they were tigers, but they were, wait a minute, all 8th graders think they're tigers, don't they? Until they arrive at Orland High to discover, not so much. You think you're a tiger. We're going to show you what the jungle. Oh yeah, it is the Guns N' Roses song, Welcome to the Jungle. By the way, Axl Rose, of course, loves Blake. And he loves his poem. The lines, Welcome to the Jungle, suggests that the world is a place of constant struggle. You want to be a little lamb walking out there with your cutesy tootsy little bell around your neck? Blake says, boy, I don't know if you make it. Not very long. But wait a minute. The first poem celebrates the lamb. Now we're seeming to celebrate, if not celebrate fear or appreciate, the tiger. So who are you? What are you? If you could choose, would you prefer, this is a 3B question. Right now, do you think of yourself as more tiger or lamb? See, that's an interesting question. If you find yourself asking, gee, I don't know which is the better one, welcome to the mystery of Blake. Notice he doesn't play the game of telling you which is better. He just asks you, do you have to have both in the world? So, for example, if you're going to find a significant other, is it better to put 2 tigers together, or is it better to have a lamb and a tiger together? And think about the people that you know who you've kind of grown up around, who were quote unquote in love. How would you qualify them? Were they both of the same? Were they both lambs? Were they both tigers? Or is it true what Plato says in Symposium, opposites attract? A lamb loves a tiger just like a tiger loves a lamb, but for different reasons. And finally, remember, it was Thrasymachus who pointed out to Socrates at the end of Republic 1, really, shepherds don't love lambs. They love lamb chops. That's why they take care of lambs. And that's exactly what Machiavelli said the prince does. You want a leader who's a lamb? Or do you want a leader who's a tiger? And would the best leader be the leader that looks like a lamb? In fact, people would even get on TV and talk about him as being a wimp, as making concessions, as always giving ground. But actually, is the most vicious tiger. Machiavelli said that's the true prince. To look like a lamb, but actually be a tiger. That's what you really want to be. Question, back to Katie's observation. Can you really control the tiger, though? That is to say, natural instincts being what they are, can you really control those natural instincts? Or is that